All right, good morning. Thank you for traversing the rain across Los Angeles. It never ceases to amaze me that a little rain makes our traffic crazy. We want to welcome you to LABC's Economic Recovery Series. This is the third session, and it's on resources and incentives for building sustainable and affordable housing. My name is Kelly Farrell. I'm co-managing director of Gensler's Los Angeles office. We are 500 people strong in LA, and we're actually redoing our space across the way, so we hope to have you back when the rest of our house is open. I also lead our housing practice, so this is a topic near and dear to my heart and to all of ours as we try to address the housing issues in LA. Today's event, you will hear from some of the leading policymakers, green building experts, utility representatives on the latest policies, incentives, and technologies that will help decarbonize both single-family and multifamily housing. A little housekeeping before we get started. There are double doors on each side of this aisleway. They're going to be closed because we have teams working away and starting their mornings. If you need the men's room, it's down that way. If you need the women's room, it's down that way. Coffee, drinks, water are right behind me. And with that, I'd really like to introduce Justine Gonzalez of Wells Fargo.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. I'm Justine Gonzalez. I help lead the philanthropy and community impact team at Wells Fargo, and we are proud to be supporters of LABC and the event here today. We are focused on supporting a number of sustainability and affordable housing projects across LA, and we're lucky to work with East LA Community Corporation on a project to decarbonize their portfolio last year, and it was a great example, I think, of how different incentives and private capital can be combined to help decarbonize affordable housing. And so I'm really excited that we have all the experts here today who are going to talk about just that and how we can continue to push this work forward. And really just want to thank the LABC team for bringing us all together for this important conversation. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. A big thanks to Gensler, Kelly, Monica, the whole team for hosting us in their beautiful space here. And thank you to Justine and Wells Fargo for your support. And we really appreciate it. So my name is David Fink. I'm the Sustainability Director at the Los Angeles Business Council. I will be your humble moderator for the day. And I'll just ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, maybe just your name, your title, and maybe just, a little bit about your organization.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think this is on. My name is Ben Stapleton. I'm the Executive Director for the U.S. Green Building Council of California. We're an independent nonprofit. I kind of like to say for California, by California. Our mission is to really leverage the built environment to make California a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable place for all. Hopefully everyone can get behind that. This space in particular is something we're really passionate about and very engaged in. I'm a big believer that sustainability can be done affordably, and we need to do everything we can to make that happen, to really address health for all of our communities. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, David. I'm David Jacot, Director of Distributed Energy Solutions at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Very excited to be here. Thanks to Gensler for hosting us in their space again. We're embarked on decarbonizing our grid, our power supply to our customers, and helping our customers decarbonize at the same time. So we're very excited about that. We're on an aggressive timetable to completely decarbonize our electricity supply by 2035. And we're looking ways to help our customers do the same. So we're excited to be here to talk about how we're doing that to help our customers specifically. So we'll have more on that as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Krista Egger with Enterprise Community Partners. Really happy to be here. I'm the Vice President of our Building Resilient Futures team, which is our national team focused on climate issues. Enterprise is a 43-year-old nonprofit in the affordable housing space. We've produced or preserved more than 1 million units of affordable housing around the country, and really proud that climate is central to our operations. So thanks.
Good morning. I'm Jenny Scanlin. I'm Chief Development Officer with the Housing Authority for the City of Los Angeles, and we're the second largest housing authority in the nation and the oldest developer of affordable housing in the City of Los Angeles, having started our practice in 1938. We own a number of public housing units, a portfolio of about 5,700. We have a non-public housing portfolio that's increasing, is around 7,000. So we have a total of about 13,000 units in the city of Los Angeles that we own or manage as affordable housing. We also have the largest Section 8 program, which is a housing voucher program that helps to bring affordability through placing our income qualifying households into either private market rate housing or public affordable housing. So excited to be here and talk about this topic.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Excuse me. Jose Buendia, Southern California Edison. I'm a senior manager over our low-income and building electrification programs. Southern California Edison serves over 5 million residential and non-residential customers across our service area. Similar to LADWP, we have some rather lofty goals to decarbonize our grid and decarbonize about 90% of our building stock by 2045. So again, the programs that we offer are to try to help customers, especially the low-income and disadvantaged customers, through that transition. Thank you for having me.
Great, and then just so you know, those two boxes are also mics, so you can pick those guys up if you want. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. I'm a third generation Angelino. I think this is one of the world's great cities. There are countless reasons for that. The weather, the tacos. I love tacos. But I think the people of the city are what makes it so great. In spite of that, we're not unlike any other big city. We have our challenges, and we'll talk about some of those today. Sort of two of the big ones are housing and climate change. And when I say climate change, I mean both reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and also how do we prepare for the impacts of climate change. As of 2023, we were approximately 270,000 units short of the affordable units we need to meet current demand. And in terms of buildings, roughly 43% of our greenhouse gas count for the city is attributed to buildings, more than any other sector. And when we're talking about existing buildings in the state of California, 75% of the building stock was built before 1978, the first year we had a building energy code. That means the overwhelming majority of buildings have never had to abide by any energy efficiency standards. On top of all that, the recent wildfires have only exacerbated these issues, but also created opportunities to build back in a more resilient way, train a new generation of skilled workers, and electrify our housing stock. So, with that, I'd like to start with Jenny. Could you just sort of give sort of an overview of our housing needs, the housing crisis we're in? Many people are priced out of the ability to buy houses. Rent has gone way up, which makes it difficult for people to make ends meet. So, and we haven't met our sort of supply needs. So could you just sort of talk broadly about where we're at, how we got here, sort of where we need to go, and maybe just also a word about how important it is to decarbonize our affordable housing stock and what that means to the folks who live in those buildings.
Sure. Thanks, David. So I think you started with setting the table. I feel like you've given me the burden of taking us into the valley, and I'm hoping that the rest of the conversation is going to take us up to the top of the mountain. But I'm gonna take us down to the valley right now on kind of where we are with our housing needs. So I think the numbers that we talk about are staggering. I think it's very, it's overwhelming when you hear about what our RENA goals are, 270,000 units. And I'll be honest, I think that's an understatement. We've been doing a lot of studying, I think, as a region of the housing need, and particularly I think that has been spurred on by some positivity, getting things like Measure A passed, and adding some more tools to our toolbox to actually solve this problem. But in order to solve it, we really have to better understand it. So I think I'm glad we're starting there. When you look at need and you look at that versus production, we have a problem, right? So over the past 6 years, if we look back, our average housing production across the county is about 19,000 units per year. So that's average production. If you're looking at trying to, you assume zero population growth, right? It's going to take us, almost a decade just to meet our regional housing needs. But that is probably an inappropriate way to look at it, because we do have growth in this area, and we continue to see growth in LA and LA City and County. And then I think the more devastating part of that statistic is that of those 19,000 on average units, only about 1,700 of those units are built for affordable housing. So that would be kind of dedicated in some way, shape, or form to serve households ranging from 30% area median income up to 120% area median income. So, that's probably less than 5%, somewhere between, on average, 5% to 10% of our housing is actually being built for those who have deeply affordable needs. The USC Lusk Center, and I'll be honest, I'm a Cal graduate, so it's disappointing for me to credit USC, but go USC. They were hired to do a study on behalf of the leadership that's overseeing Measure A, to kind of better understand what our baseline is and how we can move the baseline. So based on that, we know that there are 64,000 people who are experiencing homelessness on any one night in the city of Los Angeles. I think the more alarming statistic, and we have a lot of baseline statistics, is that just last year, over 63,000 new people access services, right? So that means that those are people, so we think of, I think a lot of people think of homelessness as something that is sort of intrinsic and focused on a very sort of specific population that has been on the streets for years. What we're seeing is that is not the case, that homelessness is a place that people are falling into on a regular basis. And so when you've got 60,000 people accessing services for the first time in any one year, that tells us that the problem is getting worse, and that people are looking for interventions in any way they possibly can. The issue that you talked about, rents being high, is also a difficult problem, because right, we're pricing ourselves out of housing, or we're creating overcrowding situations. So in the county of Los Angeles, we know that there are 1.3 million people that are what we would call rent burden, meaning that they are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. Now, I'm sure those of you are probably calculating in your head, am I one of those? And probably, I would guess that there's probably a portion of this room that would also consider themselves to be part of that 1.3 million. But when you drill down past that to people who are paying more than 50% of their income towards rent, you get to a number of 540,000 people. 500,000 people are spending half of their income just to try to keep a roof over their heads. So when you think about what you have to spend every month for food, for utilities, and for all of the other costs of living, if 50% of your paycheck or your income is going towards rent, you are really getting very close to finding yourself unhoused, because any missing paycheck, anytime you have an expense that you were not expecting, you're not going to be able to pay rent, or you're not going to be able to pay your utility bill. We just found out in our public housing portfolio, we have over $4 million in arrears in utility payments. with LADWP. Over 50% of our households in public housing, these are people who are actually in public housing who are only paying 30% of their income in rent, are not able to keep up with their utility bills. So we have 50% of our households in arrears right now with LADWP on utility bills. Of those, 3 of our households are over $10,000 in arrears. So the idea of the connection between, affordability, housing needs, and what are we doing to create a system of housing that is more affordable through not just through electrification, but just sort of what are the means that we're using to build more sustainably is really going to be key to how we are solving our housing problem moving forward. Because if we build the way that we're building now, as you can see, even those who are in affordable housing might have the possibility of losing that housing, are not able to keep up with that housing. So I think that those are really, really critical things. We also know that most of the affordable housing in cities around the county is already been placed due to redlining and sort of historic issues in areas that have that are deeply disadvantaged, right? So they have climate issues already. They're normally in what we call heat island areas, right? So 5%, the temperatures in those neighborhoods are typically, 5 degrees higher than what you'll find in the rest of the city. So they have an even stronger need for things like air conditioning or other means to mitigate that heat. So we know that there are biggest users of utilities actually in these areas, but they can't afford the utilities that they're using. So I think in terms of setting the table, hopefully that just adds to some of this discussion and the context of why how we build is so important to actually creating sustainable environments and sustainable practices to keep people housed. So hopefully that just gets us partway into this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for kind of framing things here locally. I want to kind of zoom out for a minute, I guess. At the federal level, the federal government has been pulling back on programs in the Inflation Reduction Act, programs at HUD. Pulling back might be the understatement of the year, but as an organization that works nationally, Krista, could you talk a little bit about how Enterprise is sort of adjusting your way of operating during this sort of transition time?
Yeah. I was going to say happy to answer that question, but I wish the question didn't have to be asked. So I'll focus. There's so much happening at the federal level right now as it relates to housing that I'm just going to focus really on when it relates to affordable housing and climate and environmental sustainability. And I'll first start by taking ourselves a couple years back. August 2022, Inflation Reduction Act became law. And around that time, my team started really mobilizing to help ensure that all of the programs that were authorized to be created by the different agencies across the federal government would be designed in such a way to actually provide benefit to affordable housing stakeholders. And then as the programs were being stood up, ensuring that implementation of those was going to deliver positive impact in affordable housing communities. Because we know that the nuances of how programs are designed and implemented can make all the difference in this. And I will say also that Enterprise really stepped up to take a role in this because we recognize that these were generational investments, not just in climate, but in dollars that can go towards our housing crisis that Jenny just articulated. And so some of the examples of what we were engaged with, we're working with HUD on the stand up of their Green and Resilient Retrofit program, which was designed to competitively allocate $1 billion across affordable housing through grants and loans to mainly upgrade existing buildings, with DOE's rebate programs, which are allocating about $18 billion for states and tribes to design how to allocate their specific allocation of that to promote efficient and electric home upgrades. And then EPA's programs, which included community change grants, expanding the environmental justice work, and the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and then working with Treasury on their tax credits and rebates, which were really designed to boost capital absorption, increase jobs, and reduce energy bills for families across the country. So bring us back to today. Although HUD committed all of its Green and Resilient Retrofit program last year, the financing draws and closings through that program are slowed and stalled for all but a handful of projects. There was actually an article published by Bloomberg this morning, written by Krista Capps, that does a really good job highlighting some of the impacts to specific affordable housing developments, which we're counting on portions of their capital stack coming from those programs, which are unclear about the future of right now. The DOE-funded rebate programs are moving forward, albeit on different timelines according to the states and tribes which are allocating those. And my understanding is that the California Energy Commission is moving forward with a home electrification and appliance rebate program, which is great news. And then when it comes to EPA, we have a shining light in the Solar for All program, which is moving forward to deploy more solar across the country. But otherwise, all of EPA's IRA programs are paused in one form or fashion right now. And then the tax credits allocated by Treasury are bound to be changed as tax policy changes at the federal government. So how are we adjusting our way of operating? I think, number one, we're staying true to our values. We know that the needs of affordable housing communities have not changed in spite of election outcomes. We're seeking to be clear-eyed about what types of policies, what types of financial incentives are and are not available now, so that we can try to communicate clearly to stakeholders about what they can or cannot pursue. And we're seeking to continue to advance the work of promoting high-quality, affordable housing to Americans across the country, albeit through different tactics than we were expecting with the capital absorption that we thought was coming. So I think one thing that I'm really optimistic about is that over the past 2 or 3 years, when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed and we knew that all this capital was coming and programs were being developed, there's been a tremendous amount of work across the sector about how to prepare for that capital absorption, how to adjust your housing preservation plans to include air conditioning, for instance, or to account for other climate needs. And so for really what it takes to bring sustainability benefits across the sector, there have been portfolio approaches, property approaches, financing mechanisms, mobilization of TA, lots of solid learnings, which can still be the foundation of our collective work moving forward. So there's a lot that we can still build on, although we're going to have to be even more creative than we have in the past about how to finance this work.
Got it. Thank you. Ben, two sort of separate questions here. Want to pass the mic back? Thanks.
I was tempted to use one of the squares.
Somebody's got to do it. You got to break the ice here.
I'm happy to try. So.
Okay. So sort of two separate questions here. So decarbonizing buildings can be complex, especially when we're talking about affordable housing. So talk to us about the barriers and how we simplify the process. And before you answer that, maybe just if you could distinguish between energy efficiency, which long had been the kind of key role of, climate in buildings, and now we've moved in the last 5 to 7 years to building decarbonization. So if you could just sort of describe how the two are different and how they work together, and then if you want me to repeat the first question again, I'll go back to that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it's important to understand the difference. I said this to David earlier, but someone said this a few weeks ago, and I heard, and I really liked the phrase. But when we get into sustainability work, and I think this is especially true in the green building world or any other, we learn a foreign language, and we expect that other people understand what we're saying. So it's important to make sure we always start at the beginning and really be human with each other. When I think about energy efficiency, I like to think about energy use intensity, right? So how much energy are we using per square foot? You can look at it per door or per resident. You can cut that factor a variety of different ways. But that really looks at how much energy we're using to provide that function of what that property is. And then when we talk about building decarbonization, we're looking at carbon use intensity, right? So again, looking at those same metrics, whether it's per door or per square foot, per resident, how much carbon are we using? And we can measure buildings against each other based on the energy use intensity and that carbon use intensity. The good news for us here in California is that our grid will continue to decarbonize. So the more that we push our end use to electricity, hopefully we're going to be decarbonizing our buildings. But energy efficiency plays a critical role in that. We have to reduce the amount of energy that we're using as we're continuing to add more to the grid, whether that's electric vehicles or whether that's heat pumps or induction cooktops. We're putting more energy demands on the grid, growing population, pick your thing, more HVAC for a higher number of heat days. And so we need to drop that energy use intensity while we drop carbon use intensity. And so I like the phrase building decarbonization because it's sort of an elegant way to kind of wrap everything together. You wanted me to hit the barriers next, is that right? So I know we've painted a fairly bleak picture up here, and that's okay to a certain extent because it is tough. Decarbonizing buildings, especially existing buildings, and I think it's important to note, we have affordable housing that's structured, subsidized, deed restricted affordable housing, and that's a whole world of affordable housing that's got layers of financing, it's got layers of regulation, and then we have naturally occurring affordable housing, which is just apartment buildings and others that rents have been depressed for a long time because there's been lack of investment in those buildings, or they're not being managed as actively, or and there's a variety of reasons why we have naturally occurring affordable housing, and they work very differently from each other. And here in LA, we have a lot of both, and the naturally occurring affordable housing also doesn't get the attention it really needs because it's a big challenge for us here, and especially in our region. So coming back to the barriers, there are a lot of them. It's complex. You're dealing with a building where you have a lot of tenants typically. How do you retrofit that building and potentially look at relocating those tenants, or figuring out how to do that when one tenant's lease expires or another? That adds layers of cost and complexity. Figuring out how to address your building and what parts of it, and even developing those projects is really expensive and time intensive. And I think that's something we really need to focus on, dropping the amount of investment and time and energy it takes to develop those projects. And then, look, at the end of the day, money is a big deal. Like, where do you find the money to do these things? It's not cheap. And we need to continue to figure out how do we drop the cost of the equipment, how do we drop the cost of labor, and do this in a way that's actually effective. And so those are some of the barriers. I think from a policy standpoint, too, we have some barriers. But I think those, continually we're being incentivized to look at how do we drop our energy use intensity, how do we electrify our buildings. And I do think there's solutions for this. One thing I want to say, too, which I think for me has been a helpful framing with everything going on a national level with the federal administration, is that, this was always complex and hard. In some ways, we sort of got optimistic and spoiled a little bit, in that we actually had funding and we had people that cared and were trying to support us and were trying to help us figure it out. And it hurts when they pull away, and we realize that it's going to have to be us still that's going to have to figure it out. But that doesn't mean that the work should stop. It doesn't mean that we should lose our resolve. It doesn't mean we should change the words we use. We need to keep moving that forward. So I just want to make sure we say that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. David, I think that's a good segue to the work that's happening here. Do it. Yes.
Yes, David.
Yes.
I'm going to be brave and try the box. Is it working?
Flip it to your lapel.
Talk to us about how LADWP is helping to decarbonize affordable multifamily housing here in LA, And, I know you'll talk about the camera program, which I think we're about 3 years in. So talk to us a little bit about the lessons you've learned, as you've been rolling out this program.
Sure. So first of all, is this working? Yeah. Okay, yes. Great. So, and let's see, does it work from here? Yes. Okay, excellent. So I have previewed the camera program at this event a couple years ago, so I won't fully go through it in too much depth. But very quickly, it's a multifamily retrofit program, comprehensive, deep decarbonization, energy efficiency, electrification, solar through virtual net energy metering, inclusive of potentially in the future electric vehicle chargers and demand response and other energy management type strategies, perhaps distributed battery storage as well, with a labor component to encourage development of high road labor jobs too. So it's very, very broad spectrum, transformative market transformation type program to serve a very hard to reach customer segment. So we rolled it out May 1st, 2022. And we're now getting completed projects finally. These are long lead time projects given how complex they are. We've got 7 completed projects. I have 1 that I can share stats on. We're still proofing out the results on the other 6. But this is really exciting because we have it was a $1.1 million project cost, $528,000 of DWP incentive. And another $600,000 roughly in layered incentives from 3 other funding sources. South Coast AQMD, the state's low-income weatherization program, and CEC's tech program. So all told, we covered all but $9,600 worth of project cost in that project. And I'll get the details on the other 6 fairly soon, but I can tell you this, of the 16 projects that are in the project pipeline, all but 2 of them are seeing over 100% project cost coverage with the layered incentives. 1 is seeing 82% project cost coverage, and the other one is only seeing about 40-something%. So that one's probably got a big ticket item that I don't know what the measure is. But the point is, this is really exciting. With these layered incentives on top of what was already a robust DWP incentive, we're getting to that 100% project cost coverage to where at the back end, the entire cost is being covered. That brings us to the challenge, which is the upfront project cost, because we're talking affordable housing projects, and portfolios where these folks don't necessarily have the ability to outlay $1.1 million at the outset. That particular job, that particular project, I believe, is the one that was referenced earlier, the East LA Community Collaborative project in partnership with Wells Fargo. And that was able to be financed up front. It was challenging, my understanding, but I got it done, which is great. Set a model going forward. But how can we do more of that? How can we really scale that? We actually met yesterday in what they call a deal room that was set up for us by the Milken Institute out of New York to meet with a bunch of lenders that are interested in participating in this space and pitch this very program and this particular gap specifically. And what these lenders are looking for is for project developers to have a pipeline of projects like this that have been what they call de-risked. In other words, a project developer that has done the analysis, determined what the savings are, what the measures are, come up with a project spec, has construction, has contractors lined up, ready to do the work, but need the funding, need construction loan funding up front. We're there. We're there. We've got a pipeline that we're estimating roughly is a $100 million pipeline of projects. 200 projects that have passed eligibility, and we think if this really breaks loose, we can move a lot of those projects, 17 under construction, of which 6 have finished. Well, now we've got more we can start to really see happen. So we're super excited about the project, about it really getting ready to take off. A couple caveats on the federal side: we're not terribly exposed to federal funding. None of those layered incentives are federally based. The only exposure where we hope to take advantage of tax credits, that's threatened, obviously. None of those projects took advantage of tax credits in this round. That's not a huge exposure. And then the other thing, obviously, GGRF. GGRF was what we were looking to for that bridge funding. Now, for our program, we think the CDFIs we'll be working with, we can probably find other funding that we can revolve. I estimate if it's $100 million pipeline, and we think that's 5 years worth of work, if we can find $20 million, a $20 million pot to revolve, that's probably sufficient. And we can find that locally. We don't need the GGRF for that. But the problem is, if this model is successful and we want to scale it around the country, that's where the GGRF could have come in. And without that, that opportunity doesn't present itself. So that's more the tragedy of losing the opportunity to scale something that we've identified a way to actually make work. So anyway, that's the update on that. Super excited about it, and we expect to see a lot more project activity now that we're getting to this point of being able to plug this gap, bridge this gap of no out-of-pocket from the customer at any stage of the process. In many cases, not all, but many.
Can I just take a moment to celebrate what David said, because this is very hard to do on these types of projects, and as he said, right now it took two and a half years and change maybe, but it sets up a model that can be replicated, and the layering of these incentives is very complex, especially to fit in with all the regulations and the policy, and I just want to applaud that effort, because we need to be able to prove out that is possible and show people how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Jose, you can also talk about, our other utility in the region, SoCal Edison. How, talk about the programs that are helping decarbonize buildings in low-income neighborhoods that, SCE is working on, and some of the programs from the state that you're, using that capital to funnel into these communities.
Yes, certainly. So, as I mentioned, SCE has a broad customer base. We serve about 4.5 million residential customers, of which approximately 1/3 of those customers meet our low-income standards. So we have a large population set of customers that we need to help and support, and to some of the points mentioned earlier, help them manage their energy bills. Our energy savings assistance program's been operating for decades, and in its heyday, we were serving something like 100,000 customers a year. And again, it was primarily energy efficiency program, focusing on reducing their energy use intensity, as Ben mentioned earlier, replacing old incandescent lamps with the CFLs to LEDs, replacing old refrigerators with new refrigerators, and in certain climate zones where it's hotter, we would replace old HVAC systems with new HVAC systems, right? So that's been the model for the program for the longest time. So in 2023, in our last low-income application cycle, we introduced our building electrification pilot, and we focused that pilot on single-family homes. And what we proposed and what we are implementing is a turnkey solution, direct install for qualified low-income customers. In order to participate in the program, the customers have to agree to replace both their space and water heating with heat pumps. And again, then additionally, some select number of customers could also receive induction cooktops, electric clothes dryers, and whatnot, right? So it's like when I designed the program, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? We're going to go and knocking on customers' doors. We're going to market to them, and they're going to want to get a free HVAC systems with water heating. Yeah, not so much, right? So heat pumps are, I guess, not as sexy as we may have originally envisioned, right? When we knock on doors and we speak with customers, that's the first time they're ever hearing about heat pumps. When we talk about building electrification, well, that doesn't flip the meter either, right? That's not something that resonates with customers. So what we've learned quickly is that when we engage customers, we have to focus on the health, comfort, and safety features of electrification appliances and technologies. One of the things that we do, we have a do no harm focus. So when we go into a customer's home, we'll perform an energy assessment, but we'll also perform a bill and rate analysis for customers, right? We want to ensure that they're going to see annual energy bill savings, right? So their electric bill may go up, right, because we're adding load. But if we can reduce their gas side of that bill, so that over a course of 12 months, a customer is realizing energy bill savings, then we will proceed with that customer. If for some reason the customer doesn't show to have energy bill savings, then we'll still proceed and perform the energy efficiency measures to reduce their bill, but we won't electrify those homes because we just won't be ready for them just yet. Our program also offers electric panel upgrades for the customers that need the electric panel upgrades. And then also, again, like I mentioned, we're doing a bill and rate analysis. So once we identify the right rate for the customers, we'll easily transition them to the rate, apply any baseline allowances that we may have for, say, a heat pump, water heater, or electric space heating to ensure that, again, they are on the most beneficial rate and they can actually realize some savings. The program is primarily focused on single family because of what both Ben and David mentioned. Multifamily projects are very complex. They are really customized for each property. It's not like a cookie cutter approach. So when we first ventured out, we wanted to focus on single family because we believe that by and large we could replicate that. Right, as I mentioned earlier, in the heyday of the program, we were serving hundreds of thousands of customers on an annual basis. We're operating right now in the hundreds. Right, so our goal is to get into the thousands and then get into the 10,000s once we hone in on the best approaches for electrifying single-family homes. The program is available to both owner-occupied and renter-occupied homes. One of the things that we've instituted is what we call our split incentive agreement. It's basically an agreement between the tenant and the owner, and it really locks the owner into not increasing the rents. Right, what we don't want to have is a renter being, kicked out or evicted for somebody who could pay a higher rent or just have their rents increase. So we have that split incentive agreement where if an owner wants to participate on behalf of the tenant, they have to agree not to increase their rent. We have limited funding. It's a $50 million program. So we have to be very smart about how we can partner with other funding sources or other programs to stretch our dollars. So over the last year and a half, we were able to tap into north of $2 million from the Clean Tech California program, and we partnered with them so that they could fund the electric panel upgrades as needed. They also funded the weatherization measures and any minor home repairs. So again, whenever you electrify, you have to also be cognizant that some of these homes may be a little bit more dilapidated or additional home repairs are necessary in order to appropriately install the electrification measures. Right, homes need to be weatherized. We need to add insulation. We need to make sure that we seal it. So it's not just like a turnkey end-use replacement, but there's a lot more that has to go into it. We're preparing for our next application cycle, and we're looking to expand the program to also include mobile homes. There's new technologies coming around where you could potentially install a heat pump water heater in the cabinet and have the heat pump on the outside. So that's one of the challenges with mobile homes is that you can't install it in the cavity, so that makes water heating difficult. But there's solutions that are being developed, new technology that's coming along that we believe that we can do that. We're also going to look at some of the naturally occurring multifamily housing. In our service area, the vast majority of properties are 20 or less units, right? And they are in those communities that are of low income, disadvantaged communities where renters choose to live in these areas because that's what they can afford, right? So there's not a lot of investment by the property owner. So we want to focus on those buildings as well to help those smaller mom and pop owner operators, help them with their buildings, and again bring those customers as well along in this decarbonization path. Our program is operated in the SE service area only, but the CEC Equitable Building Decarb Direct Install program, which is very similar to our program, will be available to customers in the state. So we're looking forward to that. Looking forward to partnering with him as well to making sure that we can again partner to the extent and there's an opportunity for us to leverage funds. Then we want to absolutely do that. And I'll also make a pitch that there is a multifamily energy savings assistance program that just kicked off last year, and again, there's a bit of an on-ramp for multifamily. So hopefully, maybe next time if I get invited, I can give an update on that particular program. But yeah, there's a lot happening, and again, we're hyper focused on ensuring that we don't leave any customers behind, and that those customers that can't afford to perform these installations on their own, that there's help for them.
Thanks. I just want to quickly note, you mentioned induction cooktops, and you did as well, Ben. Building decarbonization, in addition to the climate benefits, there's also this public health aspect. There are a number of studies that talk about that track the deleterious effects of gas appliances in homes, the nitrogen oxide that's off gassed, and so this is sort of like a core public health, a key public health kind of issue that we're getting at as well. So I just wanted to note that there's this dual benefit there. But quickly, I want to just go back to you, Jenny. Jose was talking about some of the state programs that that SCE is working with, and so I also wanted to hear from you about some of the state resources that you've been able to tap into, like the Transformative Climate Communities Program, the Sustainable Communities Program, Infill Infrastructure Grant Program. So, maybe just talk a little bit about that, and if there are any, if there's an example or two of projects here, here in LA.
Sure. Okay. So I think it is. Multifamily is much more difficult to try to initiate an effort to do this type of kind of decarbonization. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with cash flow issues and cost. I think we're very lucky to be here in the state of California, obviously for a lot of reasons, but really, actually, I would say for this conversation because of cap and trade. So I think we have to go all the way back to thank Governor Schwarzenegger for coming up with this concept of cap and trade and what that has actually done for us as a state. We've had visitors come from states around the country asking us, how did you build, these redevelopment projects? I'll use Jordan Downs, which is a project that we have in South Los Angeles, a 700-unit public housing site that we have been working over the past decade to convert to about 1,600 units of affordable housing that'll include home ownership once we're done. We have the only way that I think that we've been able to get this project done is through being able to tap into these enormous cap and trade resources. So using ASIC, IIG, getting a Transformative Climate Communities grant, all of those resources came in to help us build what we envisioned that we wanted to build, which was a LEED ND community. And the only other LEED ND community in the city of Los Angeles fully built out at this time is Playa Vista. And so we said, if we're building LEED ND and Playa Vista, a high-end community, then we should be able to show that you can do the same thing in a low-income disadvantaged community. And so Jordan Downs is that example of how do you take those same principles, that same need, and translate it to a community that desperately needs it and do it in an affordable way. And frankly, the only way to do it is through public subsidy. And thank God the state has those programs available. So those programs came in to basically act as offsets to what would otherwise be higher construction costs to us, to add some of these elements of design, whether it's trying to come up with a purple pipe system, a gray water system, whether we're looking at adding solar to a property. Those are the things that we were able to do. All of our buildings are all electric. We are putting in EV chargers. We have we are looking at how we are creating green spaces, how we're using the direction of the building, the shade options. It's a lot about. I want to say this wasn't, thank God for good architecture and great architects. So I know a lot of you in this room represent that. And so, I think it is, being able to bring that level of thinking into every element of the design of the building, and also recognizing that we are still working in a budget, and trying to deliver on that in a manner that allows it to remain affordable is probably the other side of the coin on what has allowed us to do that, right? So one is the resource, and two is the ingenuity of the architects that we've worked with and their understanding of how to solve this problem. So I think that those are, that's an example. I welcome anyone to come, and happy to host tours or a meeting for LABC at Jordan Downs, and we can walk through some of that, what we've been able to accomplish. We haven't done everything that we wanted to do, but the majority of our buildings are certifying at gold and platinum lead. So I think we're really excited about what we've been able to achieve and deliver for that community. And we hope that at the end of the day, we can provide a roadmap. I hope that roadmap becomes simpler, because I do agree trying to layer in 5 different sources on top of trying to layer in another 5 sources just to get affordable housing built is a nightmare that most people don't want to go through. So I do think that we need to still work on how do we deliver resources more efficiently or effectively, but we're getting there, and I appreciate those in the field that are willing to try.
Yeah, thanks. I think we'll definitely, I would love to do a tour, so we'll take you up on that. Krista, Enterprise has sort of a unique model in that you finance projects, you develop projects, you own properties, you're an advocacy group. So could you just talk a little bit about sort of how you operate, and then examples of your work and lessons learned from projects around the country?
Thanks. So as I mentioned at the outset, Enterprise is a national nonprofit, been around about 43 years, and we do say that we touch every aspect of the affordable housing ecosystem. We have 3 different divisions that work together to serve needs in affordable housing communities. So one of our divisions is our capital division, our investment division. So they syndicate housing credits, they provide equity and debt, asset management services, and more. Then we have a community development division, which you can think of as like an owner and operator of affordable housing. If that division were just its own company, it would be the 6th largest nonprofit owner and operator of affordable housing in the country. So we serve about 24,000 residents through ECD, and are learning every day about what works and what doesn't work from the property level through our colleagues there. And then our 3rd division is our solutions division, which does programs work and advocacy work. So we do policy advocacy at the federal, state, and local level. And then our programs work is really about helping to advance, the amount and the quality of affordable housing that we have. So we pass through funding and grants to affordable housing partners around the country. We provide technical assistance. We stand up programs. We have folks like Jamar Wilson, who's here in the room, who leads our Southern California office, which is honed into what are the needs, the local needs of place-based affordable housing work here. And then you have folks like myself who work on national programs. So we go back and forth with the learnings across all of those divisions every day. For instance, one thing that I can share, for instance, is like with Jamar's team, they're really looking to improve the ecosystem of PSH housing, permanent supportive housing. They're also looking at preserving affordable housing and building out community-driven solutions to climate change in affordable housing. And their neighborhood exchange program is one that's really a shining star that we're looking to take learnings from into our national work and deploy in other places as well. So on my team, one of the programs that we operate is a green building program for affordable housing called Green Communities. We've certified homes in every state in the country and DC and Puerto Rico, and are learning about how to both support the needs of lower capacity affordable housing developers as well as helping the ones that are able to really push the envelope, how to go farther as well. So trying to learn from places and spread the solutions everywhere that we can.
Thanks. Ben, talk to us about the opportunities to address gaps in workforce, in technology, policy. I think especially on the workforce piece, I think that's something we haven't touched on, but there's this real need there to grow the workforce, the skilled workforce.
Sure, thank you. And so I'll touch on this in a couple ways. We run a program called Green Homes California that we launched about 3-4 years ago now, initially with a grant from LADWP's Community Emissions Reduction Program. We've now layered in probably 7 different grants since then. And last year we project managed about 80 heat pump installations, EV charger installations. This year we're rolling out more EV chargers and induction cooktops. We have a pipeline of about 400 multifamily and single family homes in targeted communities here in LA, and we're expanding this program now into San Diego and up into the Bay Area. And a few things we've tried to address. Look, we're a scrappy nonprofit who's trying to do this type of direct on the ground community engagement work. So we've had to figure out how do we do things quickly? How do we do things more cost effectively? As an example, we also run an accelerator program called the Net Zero Accelerator for startups in the built environment. And so we actually had the opportunity to pilot out a number of technologies in that program to help us do assessments of single family homes much more quickly. We had probably 3 or 4 different companies in our program that had different systems for attaching a special camera to your phone to do quick home assessments that are going to look at all the energy and thermal leaks, and building out templates for assessing and doing energy modeling for multifamily properties. And so I think some of that stuff is really important because it brings down that project development cost up front. And the more time people have to spend on that, all that has to get paid for somehow when the project actually gets financed and built. And the more and more time that's spent building out that project, putting together those models, putting together the audits, that's all important information, but all that cost has to be paid back at some point. So if we can address that through technology, I think AI has a role to play there as well. I think that's really important. When it comes to technology itself, we talk about heat pumps, we talk about induction cooktops and those other things. Yes, the cost of those things has to go down, and we have to realize right now this market is living off of, for the most part, incentives, right? And everyone's talked about incentives here. I'm an econ major. We need the private sector to be able to see the ROI, and that's when things will scale for us. And if we have to subsidize our way there, it's going to be increasingly challenging. So we have to drop the cost of the stuff on the manufacturing side. And there's a number of heat pump innovations that are coming out that are reducing that cost. And there's some great solutions that look at more distributed heat pumps. Last year, we did a pilot project where we installed about 50 what we called mobile heat pumps, which are smaller units that are meant for smaller square footages, but that actually residents can take with them when they move from place to place. We got great data out of that. So some of those solutions are happening. One of the things I want to touch on that I think is we don't talk about enough when we talk about innovation, and this will move to workforce development, is around education. And we do a lot of resident engagement and education in English and Spanish, and that could be everything from, we have a trailer we pop up at events that's got a heat pump in it and building materials, to just tabling at a building all day and talking to residents. 70% of the residents we've surveyed in the last few years are aware of the health impacts of combustion in their home. 70%. That number blew me away. I thought, that number might be 40%. People know about the impacts of gas and combustion in their homes. They don't feel like they have agency to make those changes. And so part of it is informing people, okay, these are things you can do to improve the healthier space, from outdoor air, adding outdoor airflow, addressing indoor air quality, using the right cleaning products, but also helping enable them to be agents for change in their buildings, talking to their neighbors, getting organized, being aware of what these things are. And that education also applies to building owners and managers. That education applies to contractors. We have a workforce now that does this work. There's a big need to make sure they're equipped with being able to tell the story and make the case for why does a heat pump make sense. I have an example I use, which is now a couple years old, but my hot water heater went out on Christmas break, one year, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I know the number one heat pump contractor in LA. I'm going to get him down here. We're going to put in a heat pump. And so he came down, and basically the numbers ended out. It was going to cost me over $5,000 to install a heat pump hot water heater. I was likely going to get a rebate back in hopefully about 6 months for $2,500 of that, and they could install that in 3 weeks. Or my contractor, who was there telling me my hot water heater was not working anymore, could install a tankless hot water heater today, which is still fairly efficient, but it's still using gas, $800 that day. So going to my family and telling them we're going to have no hot water for 3 weeks because of what Daddy does for work that he thinks is really important. It's a hard argument to make. And my point of all that, because it's the right thing to do still, is that we can't move the market that way. And we need to empower the folks who are there to be able to have units they can go to that are in stock. We need to empower them that they've got some sort of financing mechanism that's going to reduce that cost. So it's how do we create those systems to address those gaps, because we can't expect consumers to make that decision if they're faced with that same choice on the spot. And then the workforce development side, I think one key thing, and when we deal with labor, we have a lot of contractor-focused certificate and education programs. When you talk to a lot of on that end, yes, there's specific things that we need more training in, things like energy modeling, things like understanding how to install heat pumps and how to make that case. And I don't think we've seen the reaction on the workforce development side and the labor side because they haven't seen that demand in a way that they're turning away jobs because they don't have the people to do it. And so yes, we need to have that workforce that's going to help us transition, and we should start by educating the workforce we have now. We also need to create the market demand that's going to push them to react in a bigger way. And so those things are intertwined. And again, I think it comes back to education.
Thanks. I want to just shift a little bit to David and Jose. I'm going to ask you both the same question. How are your respective utilities and the folks you work with responding to the wildfires? Helping residents affected by the wildfires build back. And are the two utilities? Are you talking to each other? Is there sort of knowledge sharing? Just curious about that. So,
are you going to force them to do that right now?
We're going to work it all out right here.
I mean, I think whoever goes first is kind of going to steal the other one's thunder. So, which is a good thing because it means we are working together. So let me, without giving away too much of what I think Jose will probably say. In short, yes, we are coordinating very closely, recognizing that we have we both have customers that were affected by the fires. For us specifically, LADWP, the Palisades fire. Obviously severely impacted Pacific Palisades, but it also severely impacted eastern Malibu, and Malibu is served by Edison. The other major fire, over obviously the Eaton fire in Altadena, is primarily impacted Altadena, but it also impacted eastern Pasadena, and Pasadena is Pasadena Water and Power. So there's three utilities worth of customers that are impacted. I'm not sure what Pasadena's doing, but certainly us and Edison have been talking quite a bit. There's an interest for both of us to work together to have a similar offering for our customers. From DWP's standpoint, we learned that Edison was already working on a wildfire recovery program, has been for some time. There's a statewide administrator of it. And so when we learned that, subsequent to the wildfires, we already knew we were going to be doing something. And then we figured, well, what we do, we should probably sync up with what Edison's doing, because we're going to have customers in Malibu and customers in Palisades that are going to be comparing notes. And it just, if Edison's got a good program about to roll out, then we should look at that closely and say, hey, we should do something similar. Market confusion we want to eliminate. If it's already a good program, why should we reinvent the wheel, et cetera, et cetera. So that's number one. So the program we roll out will be very similar to what Edison rolls out in terms of the measures that are offered and incentive levels, to the point where it's probably going to match. We will have we might add a few measures that we want to do that aren't in Edison's program. So there's that. The other thing I want to mention, though, and we're also in sync, I think, with Edison on this one, is that we're not planning to have a beyond code energy efficiency component. And I want to make clear on this. So this is a voluntary program, and this is carrots, no sticks. That was made pretty clear right after the fires that the Coastal Commission requirements were being in CEQA. The governor already said those are going to be waived. The mayor's office said the electrification ordinance was waived, although the city attorney's already deemed it's unenforceable anyway. So I'm not sure why it's still even on the books, but here nor there. But it's a carrots approach, and so it will be electrification program, resiliency focused. So the reason we're not looking to put a beyond code energy efficiency component into it, and this was addressed earlier, Ben, I think you said. These homes, so many homes were built prior to there being an energy efficiency code, Title 24, Part 6, that those homes, most of what burned down, were extraordinarily energy inefficient to begin with. We're coming off a housing stock in the Palisades. It's mostly 50s, 60s, 70s.
85%, I think, was pre-1980.
Yeah. So those weren't built to any energy code. Single pane windows, no attic or ceiling insulation. A lot of times you have these architectural roofs that are just wood slats on rafters that are exposed from underneath. So very, very, very inefficient. So what we'll be pushing for is that they be built back to now when they're rebuilt, they comply with the current energy code. That's the key, is that they build back to current code. And that will get them tremendous benefit, energy efficiency benefit over what was there prior. And trying to push them to go 10, 15, 20% beyond the current code will be de minimis compared to the huge benefits they'll get from bringing what was there currently, prior, up to just current code. It would be de minimis, confusing, hard for us to administer, frankly not worth the time and trouble. So that'll be huge. And we've also looked at it preliminarily in terms of while we're promoting whole home electrification as they build it back, that we don't think the overall load on these homes is going to go up, even with electrification, because there's going to be so much gain from efficiency if they build it back to current code. So they're going to have so much energy savings by building back to current code that even if they electrify, the overall load is, at least load from our standpoint, from a grid demand standpoint, is not going to go up. And if it does, it'll be very small. So that's the approach we're taking. I can say that, and I need to put this in there because Edison's program goes a little further than we will as a utility, because Edison's program gets into fire resiliency as well, and Jose can talk about that more. But with us, we split that responsibility between us and the building department, because we map one-to-one. Edison's program statewide, so they work with hundreds of jurisdictions. So they have to have kind of a generalized offering for that. For us, we work directly with one building department. That's the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety. So they've got that piece of it. They're taking the same approach, which is, they're not going to incentivize customers to build to a level of fire resilience beyond what the current building code requires. But the current building code requires fire safety that's at a level far beyond most of what these homes were built to, because they weren't built to anything. So wood shake roofs are out, wood siding's out, and a number of other construction techniques that were prevalent in the time that these were built, 50s, 60s, 70s, are no longer allowed. So as long as they build back to what the current construction codes are, they'll have much greater fire resiliency than what the previous homes had. So just build back to code. That's going to be the message. Build back. You build it visually identical to what you had before, if that's what you want to do. But you're going to have to substitute components. Where you used to have a wood shake roof, it's going to have to be a fake shake. It's going to have to be composite. Where you had wood siding, it's going to have to be composite siding. Things like that. Where you had single pane windows, they're going to have to be, what's compliant now with the energy code. So things like that. So just build back to code for energy code and for building code related to fire safety, and that'll get you a much better constructed home, even if it looks exactly the same. So that's going to be the messaging around that. I don't want to take any more of Jose's thunder, so I'm going to turn it over to
Thanks, David. Excuse me. So the CPUC approved a wildfire and natural disaster recovery program a few years back. We're coining it and marketing it as the Rise Homes program. The program was supposed to launch earlier this year. It just so happened that the unfortunate fires that happened were like lit up like the weeks before, right? So we had to put a pause on the program just so that we can kind of reorganize it and make sure that we came out correctly, right? So the program is funded by the electric IOUs. So in our area, we would be able to cover like Altadena and parts of Malibu. So we didn't want to go out with that kind of message, and that's why we're partnering closely with David LADWP so that we can ensure that we have a consistent message, consistent offerings for the customers. So again, the program, the incentives are, a customer can get up to like $50,000, right? Which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot, right? But we want to help them build to an all-electric standard. To David's point, that's the minimum requisite. We'll have some additional bonus incentives for customers who want to add battery, want to go to a low GWP refrigerant source for their appliances. We'll have a rather large bonus for customers who want to go to a passive house standard. So again, the goal to the program is really just to help customers. So again, like I mentioned, the incentives are nice, but they're really a drop in the bucket when you look at the total cost of developing a home. So some of the features of the program are really the consultative services that we plan to provide customers, being able to help them navigate the landscape of everything that goes involved to building a home. Again, most of these customers have never built a home. So being able to work with insurance companies, being able to pair them up with builders, developers in their area. But I think more importantly, being able to help navigate and provide them with pre-approved building plans. That's one of the key features of the program. Working with the different office of jurisdictions to have a set of plans that are pre-approved. The goal would be to be able to show customers, this is the square footage of your old home features. These are homes that meet those requirements plus 10% or wherever they land at, right? So that they can see, I like these features, I want this architectural style, so give customers options. I want the garage on the left side, right side, they could do some minor modifications, right? Again, that'll help them get back to the road of recovery a lot quicker by providing them some of those options. Reduce their cost, right? Reduce the complications of having to navigate and working with a custom home builder. So those are some of the things that we were looking at. But to that end, we also recognize that not all customers are going to want to build to an all-electric standard, right? There's customers that may love their gas fireplace, their gas fire pit, their gas barbecue, and for them, it may be beneficial enough to, incur the additional cost to, rerun the gas pipelines and get their home set up in that manner, which is okay, right? So again, code still requires some favorable electrification ready features, so that if a customer wants to do a heat pump today for their space or water, we want to offer incentives to encourage them to do that. If they want to adopt an induction cooktop, we want to offer incentives to do that, right? So they can, do it a la carte if they're not ready to go all electric. Obviously, if they go all electric, we'll have some higher incentives to help them with that. But that's our vision is to be able to provide something for all customers, not just for the ones that want to build to an all-electric standard. But to David's point, because of the changes in code, the homes are going to be much more efficient. They're going to be electrification ready at minimum. But if we can encourage customers to build to an all-electric standard now, sell them or educate them on the health, safety features of an all-electric home, I think that that's where the real benefits will come to the customers, to just help them, provide them that assistance that they need to get them back to rebuilding their home in the quickest form possible.
Great, thanks. We're coming up on time here, and again, there's another event in this room after this, so we'll just have sort of one final question. I always like to end on a hopeful or optimistic note. So maybe each of you could just say what are one or two things you're optimistic about or hopeful about or excited about when it comes to helping us reach our affordable housing or building decarbonization goals?
I'm optimistic about California's ability to try to tell a different story and a different narrative to maybe what we see on a national basis. You know, we have the intellectual capital here, we have the actual capital here to prove out a model to make this work. I'm also optimistic about building performance standards. We're setting up a full-service building resource hub here for the state. We're working with over 36 different municipalities now and trying to align building performance policy across the state. And what I like about building performance policy is it looks at that energy use intensity and carbon use intensity, helps bring those together and helps us look at how to retrofit our buildings. So that's giving me some optimism, and that we've got a lot of folks here trying to figure out a way to make it work. And as long as we stay committed to the struggle, we can get through it.
Yeah, one thing I would say also, building on that, so yes, you know, at the federal level, it's crazy. A lot of high-quality, talented people are either being chased out or choosing to depart the craziness from federal agencies, but they have places to go. The progressive states are long suffering in terms of vacant quality positions for those types of folks. So, you know, what they need to be looking at is finding a good state position. California has them. There's many other states that are looking to do more in the space that can readily absorb the folks that are finding themselves in exile, so to speak, out of the federal government. So they have places to land. You know, and the good work we get done as the states want to do it. That's number one. And then the other thing is just, you know, again, it's been really exciting for us to see everything coming together with our multifamily affordable multifamily retrofit program recently, especially with what we see happening with the financing piece coming together. Projects happening without it, but hopefully scale it up order of magnitude with financing coming in, even without GGRF. So really excited about that.
Yeah, these are great to build on. I think we've got the best people, you know, working in our sector to come up with creative solutions. A couple of specific things that I'll lift up that are really exciting and invigorating are some innovations in terms of technology that we're seeing that will hopefully help to bring down the cost of retrofits of existing buildings. We're working on a Housing Affordability Breakthrough Challenge initiative in partnership with Wells Fargo that's lifting up and scaling some innovations. There's a group called Hydronic Shell Technologies that is working on a new panelized exterior enclosure product that has an integrated HVAC system there, which is water-based and electric. They're doing some constructionability testing right now, and then we'll be installing it on some Syracuse Housing Authority projects later this year. There's also a group called Module that's taking the concept of modular construction, but integrating it in urban communities. So they've got a hub in Pittsburgh, and they're standing up distributed final box fabrication facilities in other cities to be within 30 minutes of the communities where they'll be delivering these homes. So it's providing jobs, it's providing high quality, affordable housing in that way too. So some really cool technologies just on the horizon too to help bring down the cost of this work.
I think for me, I think how we are as a community looking at this crisis that we're in, whether it's this affordability crisis, this homelessness crisis, and now, you know, this crisis with the fires, and using it as an opportunity to innovate is, to me, I think, very exciting. Because I think the crisis is where we learn, crisis is where we innovate, and crisis is where we have the opportunity to do better. And I see that happening here, and that to me is very exciting. I live in Altadena, so I very much appreciate what is happening and the response of my community, as well as the public sector coming in to join hands with that community and create something that is going to be reflective of our desires, right, and what we can do better. I also, am excited about the fact that the voting public in LA is willing to pass things like Measure A, that we as a community recognize that we can't look beyond ourselves sometimes to solve our own problems. And so I think I really, truly appreciate sort of the civic sense of community that we have here, which I think is something that you have to have in order to make a difference and allow things to actually, become better. So anyways, I think being here now feels invigorating, and so I'm gonna let that positivity lead us, hopefully, as we go through the next few years, where there is a lot of troubled waters around us.
Yeah. So for me, I think what excites me is the fact that building decarbonization, the conversation of building decarbonization has become much more mainstream, right? We're evolving our energy efficiency programs to include building decarbonization, and in that vein, that we also have equitable building decarbonization front of mind. There are organizations like the Building Decarb Coalition that is forward-thinking. There are California Heat Pump Partnership that's bringing in manufacturers and other thought leaders to help some of these problems. And I believe you mentioned earlier, if we stick and we stay true to ourselves, then we'll help California realize their lofty decarbonization goals. We'll realize that 6 million heat pump goal of installation by 2030. I think, again, if we stay true to ourselves, we work towards those goals, I think we'll get there. And I think that's what excites me, is that we're on the right path. It's just, we just got to stay on that path.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. More than that, thank you for all the super important work that all of you are doing. We're so grateful, and thank you for everybody for being here today. We really appreciate it. And please take food with you, because we have a lot of food. So thank you, everyone.